Just hit record. All right, Tammy should be joining us soon.
Yeah, I saw her briefly this morning when I dropped off Amelia. So.
How's that going?
The drop-offs, it's been pretty good. They have a good system. It's tricky, you know, keeping the thermometers the right temperature, so they're working to do that because as it gets colder, the thermometer gets too cold or whatever, and then they try to get the kid, and the kid's coming out of a super hot car, so they're asking parents to turn the heat off before. But it's interesting. And then my little one just started at Mount Snow this week. They've reopened, so we're doing a different process there because it's not car size. You have to walk up to the building.
I'm glad that they reopened. I was worried that they weren't going to.
Me too, because with the change, with everything with COVID, plus the change in ownership really taking effect, I was concerned.
All right, well, we'll call a meeting to order at 9:04. Do you have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None.
All right, I just have two small things. C35, and I don't remember what that policy is. The file is missing from the folder.
Oh, you're right. Age of admission, students pre-K and kindergarten.
So I want to ask Meg to add that. And then C10-P, which I think is more of a procedure, is labeled C10 on the Wyndham Central website. So if it's just going to ask her to correct those two things.
Okay.
We have no members of the public, no minutes to approve, no correspondence. Wow, going through this fast. Existing policies. So my thinking in going through these for us. Hey, good morning, Matt.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey.
Good. How?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm sorry for being a little late.
I didn't know you were joining us.
I'm sure you have plenty of things.
I wasn't expecting to, but glad to be able to make it. Hi, Tammy.
Nice sweatshirt. Where can we get one of those?
You can see the back?
I saw work hard.
Work hard and be nice.
Be kind. Nice.
And be.
It's our logo. It's our motto.
I think board members should, be able to partake in those.
I will send you the link when we do our gear sale this year.
Nice.
For sure.
Morning, Tammy. You're muted. So we were just talking about our procedure for moving forward as far as reviewing policies. And maybe, Matt and Tammy, you may have some input here since you've been through this more than Kate and I have. My thinking was to go through the VSBA's policies, which they have broken down into 6 sections, go through one section at a time. I prioritized the sections just out of my thinking, but so the sections are board operations, personnel, students, school community relations, instruction, and non-instructional operations. So we can do it in any order, but I'm thinking that the student section is probably our most important one. So we'd start there and then go to instruction, of which other than, I'm not sure that there's going to be much that we want to do there, but that section, then school community relations, then board operations, then personnel, and last non-instructional operations. Any thoughts?
I would just say that we should prioritize the safety ones first. So I'm not sure which, what ones fall under the students, if that falls under the safety or not. I have to look at the specific policies, but definitely safety ones that would, possibly jeopardize a student or another student or staff member should be considered probably some of our priorities.
All right, what I'll do is I'll go through them. I think that most of those are going to be under the student section. And that's things where, the firearms, the student conduct and discipline, the C20.
Exactly, yeah.
Those are.
Okay, good.
But I can go through the entire list and pull ones out that are safety related also, and we can jump on those. Kate, does that order sound good to you?
That sounds good.
Okay. Tammy, you have to leave, right?
Probably around 9:40.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go in order then under the existing policies. B6 is a HIPAA compliance policy. The VSBA has pulled that policy, and they are only recommending it now for schools that are under the HIPAA rules. And I don't think we are, but I wanted to check with you guys before we decided to pull that policy.
I mean, we have protected health information on site as part of student academic records. Anything that's like health screenings, medical information, medical diagnoses of ADHD, that's considered covered by HIPAA.
But you don't provide any medical care though.
Besides nursing services.
And
yeah,
we do give medication out too.
Yeah.
All right. I'll ask Bill to check with the lawyer on that. There are supposedly very few districts in the state that require the actual HIPAA policy because most things are covered by FERPA, even the medical privacy aspects of it. But before we decide to recommend pulling that, I will get Bill to make sure that that's the right thing to do.
Do you know why they pulled it? Was it because the items covered were all covered by FERPA anyway, and they thought it was redundant?
I do. I actually going to read you answer I got from Sanda Cameron, the policy director for VSBA. Model policy B6 was listed as required policy, and it was positioned under the heading personnel. However, HIPAA doesn't apply to all school districts, only those that provide health care. Generally, HIPAA does not apply to schools because they are not HIPAA covered entities. But in some situations, a school can be a covered entity if healthcare services are provided to students. In such cases, HIPAA may still not apply because any student health information collected would be included in the student's education record, and education records are exempt from the HIPAA privacy rule as they are covered by FERPA. Because schools generally are not HIPAA covered, the policy was not necessary. So that's why they pulled it as a required policy, and they didn't even leave it in as a optional one. So that's the answer.
Yeah, I think your intuition's probably correct then, Mark. It probably is unnecessary.
Definitely the fewer policies, the better, especially extraneous ones. Okay, so
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
I noticed it's under personnel, but there was quite a lot of her response that was referring to student records. I wonder if that's relevant or important. She did put personnel in quotes. I don't know. I will ask her. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I didn't really pick up on that.
Do we have a B6 an adopted B6 for the district?
We do, yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah. All right. So, anything else on B6 before we move on? All right. C3, transportation review. I had this open a second ago. really just want to review this because the board, when they first implemented it, being the two kind of non-standard policies that they implemented, wanted it reviewed regularly. I read through it. I didn't notice anything personally other than I wasn't sure what the River Valley's Unified Transportation Committee. Well, I'm not sure why it's called the Unified Transportation Committee.
Looks like maybe they left out Unified School District.
We may want to, make that small correction, but did Tammy and Matt, anything that you on there that at this point you'd want updated, having gone through a year and a half?
I'd have to reread it, which I can do right now. It only takes a minute. It's only one page.
Yeah, it's short.
Yeah,
Kate?
I'm pulling it up now.
I didn't see anything that, and then so I've been doing the comparison against the Vermont school board ones, and I don't see anything that's a red flag.
I think the big question is, is there any change that we'd want to recommend to the whole board? It seems like transportation is going relatively smoothly.
I do have one question on this, and I hope we're not getting into muddy waters here. I think between the two schools, we might have some discrepancies on when the kids can ride the bus. I know we have, our preschoolers, once they turn 5, are able in Wardsboro to ride the bus. And I don't know if that's consistent at Dover.
Yeah, we don't allow preschoolers to ride the bus because, well, 2 reasons. We found last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, we ran a separate pre-K bus in the middle of the day to bring the pre-K kids to the various, when we were a half-day program, to bring them to the various town daycares. And we have, the regulations require that the person that's with them on the bus be properly registered with the pre-K licensing program. So the bus driver would have to either be CDD fingerprinted, or you'd have to put somebody else on the bus who is CDD fingerprinted to be responsible for the kids while they're on the bus. We didn't have the staff to do that. And we also found their bodies so small, their feet not being able to touch the floor, that it was in some ways dangerous. When the bus comes to a stop, they were sliding off the seats. And so we just decided, from a safety perspective, although it was legal to do it with the proper setup, we just decided to stop doing it when we moved to full day.
All right, Tammy, I don't see anything in the policy that's specific to age. So I would think that would be a procedure that you guys could, write per building.
Okay. I just
think
thought I would bring it up.
Do you think that might be a good topic for the Transportation Committee to discuss, that sort of equity of opportunity to use the bus? Because, we've had people ask to use the bus, and my stock response has been, we looked into it. We found that from the Department of Transportation, it's legal to do it, even without seatbelts. But we just felt like it wasn't within our ability to maintain the CDD regulations that were required in order to offer the service.
I think that would be actually a great topic for the Transportation Committee. So I'll put it on our next agenda.
I just want to give a little history. One of the things that came up, we had a family who had I think it was a 4-year-old turning 5, like September 3rd, 2nd, something like that. They missed the cutoff date by like 2 or 3 days. And the board denied, they wanted them to be a kindergartner. The board denied that and said, no, we're sorry, we're going to stick with our age policy, which is pretty, standard. They've done that in the past. But what they did do was they said, okay, well, and the family said, okay, well, this is causing a hardship for us because of the transportation piece. So that's when Wardsboro decided to change the age, or change the procedure, I guess, as Mark, you would say, from it, going from 4 to 5. So that's sort of how that came about.
Okay. Yeah, Matt, I think that's a good idea. And Laura will like that. It's an equity issue. All right, so other than maybe some typos, like missing the word school district, we're good on C3?
Yes.
Okay. C4. Second, I need to pull up my spreadsheet. I don't know why I put C4 on the agenda. Oh, now I know why. The VSBA changed the policy a bit. And give me 1 second, I'll give you the history on that.
Change the name of it for sure.
Yeah, they changed the name of it, and I'm not going to speak because I don't actually remember off the top of my head. And I'm unprepared for class.
So it seems like the biggest difference is they rephrased it so that instead of being limited English proficiency, it's now English learners. So they made that designation. And so it would make sense that we should follow suit with our policy to go with English learners versus limited English.
Was it just a name change, or did they add something? I thought they added something, but maybe not.
Add the immigrant students thing? I don't remember seeing that. That's not in our policy, the piece about immigrant students.
English learners have equitable access, including immigrants.
Yeah.
Right.
Students with primary or dominant language, not.
Right. I knew there was something else that they added. Yeah. So it's those two things. It's a really short policy. Seems to be pretty straightforward. Anybody have any issues recommending that we change the name and update it to the current VSBA wording?
No issues.
No issues. I like that.
Okay. Good. Kate, I'm not going to take an official vote. I think with two of us, we can. I think I can figure out how many of us are for or against something, if that's okay with you.
I feel like we're clearly communicating, and it's a matter of record, so we're good.
I agree. All right, so we're good on that. F31, the Inter-District Choice Program for Elementary. This one I'm really interested in hearing from Matt and Tammy. What type of feedback, if any, you've gotten from parents?
Well, one thing that was a little confusing, not related, but F31 is an old code number. So the current F31 is emergency closings, and that was removed this summer.
Correct.
So
I actually had on the agenda considering renumbering that so it didn't
conflict.
conflict.
So which one are we looking at exactly? F20?
It's our F31, intra-district school choice program for elementary.
And what's the equivalent current one? Is it a student policy?
The
I don't
equivalent,
think the SBA has one, do they?
yeah, there is no VSBA policy for it. This was the school choice policy that the board put together based on the, whatever the Act 46
study.
document
Yeah,
was, that they, it was required as part of that document. I'm forgetting what it was called, but the Act 46 document.
Items of agreement or something?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Articles of agreement.
There you go. We'll get there eventually. So, all right, let's start with the easy part, renumbering it. Do we want to put our own letter onto policies that are just for river valleys, to just avoid any future conflicts? Like R for river valleys?
Yeah, you're not going to get up to letter R probably safely with the state.
Not while I'm around, for sure.
Is there a model policy for school choice?
I don't
Probably not.
believe there is.
The only thing that I saw that looked close was maybe district equity, but I don't think that's more each district.
Yeah, that was district to district, right?
Versus like building to building.
I will check with, I will ask Sandra if there is one. Sometimes they have samples from other districts, but I'm pretty sure that there is no, let's see, intra-district school choice.
C34, restraint and seclusion, is only to be considered. It's not a required policy.
We won't get into that.
I'm sorry, I digress.
No. I that was a joke. I have not read that one. I'm not sure I want to, but I suppose there are situations where that could be an issue.
So going back to your question about numbering, Mark, when we ran into this about 4 years ago with the Dover board, where we had policies that didn't exist in the VSBA model policy handbook, what we did was we coded them starting at 50, but within the category that they were most relevant of. So if it was a student related policy, it would have been a C, but it would have been starting with 50 and going up. So we knew anything above 50 in any of the categories was a Dover board only policy. Yeah, if it were C, we knew it was related to students, or if it was B, we knew it was related to personnel, that kind of thing. So that's just how we selected to categorize the Dover only policies when we did that work several years ago.
I think that probably makes more sense than choosing a new letter.
Just allows you to file them where, within the most relevant category, which might be helpful down the road.
Kate?
I like that. Yeah. So we're at 34 in the student policies. Do you think 15 is how long does it take to make new policies? Is 15 a reasonable buffer?
That's what we thought. That's what we thought 4 years ago. But
do you remember what number they were at 4 years ago?
It's a good question. I think they were around in the 30s then, so I don't think we've added too many.
Then 50 sounds great.
I have a feeling that 2020 is going to be a year that they've added more than previous years because of COVID and all the issues in relations to that. So I'm good with 50 if you guys are.
Yes.
So we will recommend changing our F31 to F50.
And you were going to check with Sandra to see if there was anything similar
Yeah.
for other schools. Okay.
Absolutely. That is on my list now. So the most important really is the content and how it's working for you guys currently. Is there enough in there to back you guys up for decisions? Is there enough in there to help guide the procedure writing process?
Just double reading it now. Reading again.
Can't hear you, Matt. What was that?
I'm just reading it again.
Oh, okay.
My mic kind of quiet today.
It's going in and out.
Is that any better?
Right now, it's good.
Oh, okay. Just speaking from my perspective, I haven't felt any limitations by this policy. We noticed, because we had such a large influx this summer of new students, that the clerical part and keeping up with the administrative piece of it was an extra lot of work for Lori this summer. But, you know, having the policy and having everything laid out neatly really allowed us to be really clear with new families, and they knew what we expected of them. We actually have a family who has selected, a family of a school choice town who has selected to send one child to Wardsboro and another child to Dover because they felt it was the best fit. And I think that speaks to, you know, the success here. It's flexibility, there's equity, there's, you know, use of resources, there's collaboration, there's accountability for the residential piece, which I think is really important. I don't have anything to add or take away at this point with my experience with it.
The only thing I might like to see is only under extenuating circumstances would a request to switch back to another school midway through the year be granted.
So I'd like to see that added so that they couldn't just choose mid-year unless there really was a...
Only under extenuating circumstances. And I guess it would be up to the superintendent to decide that.
Matt, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I always like having, you know, some flexibility, like Tammy said, where the administration has some latitude to deal with something that we haven't thought of. We don't want to paint ourselves into a corner. I'm just rereading again to see, is there some place that says they can't switch?
I think it's more into it's in the actual application part of it somewhere.
Okay.
I don't have that pulled up. I could.
I feel like I remember that application you have to choose by March, and then you have to choose for the whole school year. So that would make sense to, you know, that, yeah, if it's to give you guys the bandwidth to be able to make a change if it's not working or if there's a circumstance that needs addressing.
I can send you the link, but I don't see a chat option.
Oh, I had it turned off since we turned it off for the district.
Okay.
Do you, I think it's in the policy spreadsheet.
The link to the application?
I think, I'm double checking
Okay.
now. No, I guess it's not. Matt, you had it at one point on the front page of,
Yeah, it's still on the front page of the Dover website. Scroll down, it's on the left, it says application.
so I know we spent a lot of time going over that application. Dwight and I pretty much, tore it apart letter by letter. So I guess my question for you, all three of you, is should we adjust the application to open up that door, or should we make it a policy that the superintendent can entertain such a request under extenuating circumstances, but leave the application implying or saying that you need to make a choice and that's your choice for the year, so that we're not openly giving people the idea that they can go back and forth.
I'm
So
sorry,
the application says, what will be your current town of residence for the school year? And then it says, what is your school of choice for the upcoming school year? It doesn't say anything about that you can't change. It just says, what is your choice? So it's maybe that a little bit of vague is okay.
I would think so. As long as we're not setting a hard wall. Would you guys be comfortable in us just asking Bill to, I don't know, like, you guys don't have a procedure or anything for that, do you, beyond the application?
Well, there's the whole application process, right? So they submit the application, and then the procedure is Bill's office reviews it. He'll communicate with us up to see if the space is, if we can handle it. We'll also check to make sure that we're observing the 5%? No, 10%, right, Tammy?
Yeah.
10%.
That we're not shifting more than 10%. And then Bill would respond to the family with a decision from his office. That's been the procedure.
So we could just ask Bill to amend that procedure rather than putting it in a policy, unless, Tammy, you feel strongly that it should be in the policy.
So under the guidelines and procedures, though, where it's a little bit more specific. So we have the policy, and then we also have the guidelines and procedures. Under here, I believe it lists all of that: space in the building, space available in each grade level, right size classing, sizing, younger siblings, wait lists, school changes in extenuating circumstances. School changes mid-year will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Parents should apply through the WCSU central office. So it is listed under the procedures, which exist already.
That sounds pretty good. Where did you find the procedures, Tammy?
It's listed underneath, on your website, Matt, you have it listed underneath the actual policy. So
Okay.
if you click on your policy link, it's the 3rd page, and it's actually quite long.
Got it.
So it's the whole, it's all of it together. So the policy is the procedures, and then we've got the application as well.
So on the school board website, it's only the policy, but on the Dover website, we have the policy and the procedure. Got it. Thank you.
And that does have the extenuating circumstances.
Perfect.
I see that. And the length of placement, it says they can do it like once they're granted the placement, they can keep the placement throughout their whole career of of 6th grade.
Yeah, Mark, like you said, I think you guys were very thorough in how you went over this when you designed it.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I retyped up that whole thing at some point because I couldn't stand the formatting that we had.
So one word on a blank page.
Or an entire blank page, which I see there is one there. the Virgo in me that drives crazy. So, Tammy, it seems like we have that ability already.
Yeah, I'm glad that's in there. Good.
Which I think is good. I wonder whether we should, I don't know if we can, add that procedure to the F-31 document,
Right.
so that it's clear to everybody that's looking at the policy.
Always nice to have attached procedures, not just for parents, but for us as well. Because,
Exactly.
you know, there's so many procedures to keep track of, and if it's right there with the policy, it just makes it so much easier for us when we're having to implement these
Make a
or enforce
decision,
these.
right?
I guess to be devil's advocate, and I have a feeling this might be what Rich would say, if the procedure changes, which is a lot easier to do than the policy, you have to remember to update that document. And that's the more difficult part, I think. But I think it makes sense to have it both for the, no offense, more for the public than for you guys.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
agree. Yeah.
Kate?
So who takes ownership if that document changes? Like, who takes ownership of updating it with the policy? Like, updating it to be the most current version. And how do you keep track? Like, is there, I guess there's a stamp on the end of it when it was adopted, right?
For the procedure, I don't know. I don't think there would be, but
Yeah, the
Yeah,
policy has a date on the PDF, but it doesn't have an approved and adopted signature on the PDF from the Dover website.
Right. I think this is, you're opening the can of worms that we've been struggling with for, well, quite a long time now, and that is procedures for maintaining and updating policies and procedures. I mean, it seems kind of crazy, but I think the answer is we don't really have a procedure yet for, we have a non-standard formatted policy, or we don't have a standard template. You know, those are all things I think Mark's been talking about with website development, document management, all the sort of business intelligence stuff that, we just haven't been able to put resources into just yet. And we need to,
we do. But in order to make that a financially viable thing to do, it's going to have to be for the whole SU. And document management is not cheap. It's really important, but it's not cheap.
Right.
Kate, just so you know, the policy file that's in the folder for WCSU does have the dates and signatures on it.
Okay.
And we're going to be moving all those to the top.
So that means we have 3 versions of this policy out online right now.
Which probably isn't good.
Not good, right?
So Kate, as far as the who takes ownership, when it comes to procedures, it has to be administration, because they theoretically can change a procedure without even telling the board. So it would be hard for us to take ownership of that. I think this is such a possibly controversial and such a huge one that the board would be involved in it no matter what. Otherwise, there could be potentially a big uproar in the community about it. So I think for now, if we take it on a case-by-case basis, and I can put a note on the spreadsheet that the procedure is included, so that if there are any updates, it'll be a little bit easier to know that it needs to be updated. And I can put a date on that note of when the procedure was added to the file.
It would be really nice. I mean, I would love someday to have a folder in my Google Drive of editable docs that are the procedures for each of the policies that we have. So Tammy and I could refer to those, could update them easily from anywhere, that we could publish them with view-only access for people who are searching them to be able to see them. Then we could get at them really easily. There was one folder, one procedure document for the district, that kind of thing. It's well within our reach to set that up and do it. It's just a matter of time to make it happen. I think, like Mark said, document management is can be expensive and it's time consuming.
It doesn't have to be expensive if we're just talking about a Google Drive folder.
True, right. I mean, just in terms of the time,
Yeah.
it's just time consuming.
So do you guys have sorry, Tammy, I know you have to go.
I do, yeah.
Did you have any comments on the new policies that we were considering? Electronic communication between employees and students, and the student freedom of expression in school media. More importantly, a weapons policy. Not a weapon, yeah, a weapons policy.
I haven't, I'd have to like read through each one, right? And Mark, I don't have the time to do that right now.
That's
I'm
fine.
really
That's fine.
sorry. Not off the top of my head.
Okay. What I'm going to do is either ask Bill or Kate and I can come up with a weapons policy, which I think is going to be pretty close to the Dover one that we had before, because that includes the firearms.
Right.
I'll send that to you.
Okay,
You
great.
can take a look at it and give us any feedback.
Okay, I probably have it. I think I have all of the Dover policies, so I can read through it.
Okay. It's also in the meeting docs link under
Okay,
the policy committee. I put it in today's meetings folder.
perfect.
All right. Thank you, Tammy.
All right, bye guys. I gotta go teach how to round multi-digit numbers to the 1,000th.
Ooh.
Oh,
Go get it, Tammy.
fun.
All right, bye guys.
Bye. Matt, do you guys have any place to look for procedures? Like if you had a question about something, do you have a folder to go to? Do you have any place to go?
So we have some spotty records, or I don't know about Tammy, I have spotty records of procedures from past that Bill has shared with me. And then there are a couple of old binders of old procedures and things here. But policies have been in flux my entire time here. And so I've been doing it on a case-by-case basis. When something comes up and I have a policy that I have to administer, I usually will go and search through the electronic files and see, and then I'll look in the binders and see if there's any paper files. There's a lot of paper files that there are no electronic records for. And then sometimes there's a model procedure on the VSBA website that I can reference, or I have to cast my line with Bill and see if he has, just institutional memory of certain responses or administrative procedures. So no, with all the flux of policies and changes and changing codes, I have not produced a document management system for the procedures from my view yet. I'd like to, it hasn't been a priority enough.
That would be time consuming, not something that you or Lori could take up. I mean, that's really going through a lot of paper documents and putting it together.
Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice to get a format. It would be nice to get it in a shared folder. Nice, consistency, have it published properly so people can access and searchable. So those are all things I'd like to do. It's just time.
All right, I'm gonna kind of put that on our radar for the future. Maybe once we're through with all the accounting for COVID and the CRF funds and ESSER, which we now have an extra year to use, maybe then we can start looking at the website again. I have not thought. I've felt that kind of extra money right now is just not in the budget.
Yeah.
Especially since it wasn't budgeted for. All right. Electronic communication between employees and students. This is a required policy by statute.
So that's B8, right? That's a staff policy.
Yep, that's B8.
Have a B8 in our district?
We do not.
No B8, and it's required?
Yep.
I thought we got all those. Maybe, is it new since December of 17?
I don't believe so. I think C11 is. Um, let's see. Yeah, C11 was August of last year, and B8. Oh no, it is this year. It's June of this year.
So it's pretty recent.
So it is recent. Yeah.
I'm just reading it now.
Kate, while Matt's reading it, did you have any thoughts?
No, like I was reading through it last night and I was like, I think it protects where it needs to protect, and it's inclusive enough to allow for things that don't yet exist.
Yeah, I noticed that. In reading it, it almost seemed like to me a policy that should have been standardized a while ago.
So B8, I want to look at the one for the model policies. I didn't have dual screens last night, so I wasn't doing all the comparisons.
It's amazing how we use the dual screens.
Oh, so right now you guys are on my iPad, and then I have 3 screens on my other setup right now. So yeah, I'm technically on a 4-screen system this morning.
I can't wait to get my office set up so I can have multiple screens again, rather than my 13-inch little laptop and nothing else.
Oh, that is painful. So
It's been that way for 5 years.
you've been on a tiny laptop for 5 years?
When I moved up to Vermont, I never unpacked anything because I more or less started the process of finding land and building a house right away.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't make any sense for me to unpack. I moved into a fully furnished house that we had had for 30 years already. So
Yeah. So,
Guys, my sense of this is that this is already our administrative procedure. In any of these violations, all these definitions are really clear. I would be perfectly fine adopting this as printed. I have nothing to add to it. It's well within the scope of what we already do. All the recommendations and all the reporting requirements are right in line with the way we've handled incidents in the past that would have violated this policy. And the only thing that's not here is much about discipline, but that would be an administrative procedure anyway. So I would be fine adopting this as written.
do we need to add in like the school district name?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, just those little changes, but yeah, as written makes sense.
Yeah.
and you
no,
can put it in your format where you have the date warned and stuff in the top right corner, so it's easier to see.
Yep. I can prepare that, and then I'll send both the editable and the PDF to Bill. Kate, if you're comfortable, we can ask for it to be put on the next agenda for
Yes.
the regular meeting.
Yeah, especially since this one is a new required one, and it seems like it's a pretty easy slam dunk in terms of the model. I wouldn't have any problem just adopting this as it is. You know, of course, with the personalization of the district and stuff.
And I don't think there were no, other than the names, there were no other questions that we would have to add about our own district, right?
I didn't see any.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see any now, just a quick look. Okay. Well, that was easy. So if we're all good, we'll move on to C11, student freedom of expression in school sponsored media. This one too is a relatively new one. What did I say? Last year? August of last year. I honestly don't see it overly applying to us, but I don't see it, like there's another policy, another required policy, which is clearly only for secondary schools. This one I don't see clearly delineated between primary and secondary. So I do think that since it is a required policy, it's something we should have.
I mean, I don't know about Wardsboro in terms of opportunities for students to be published in school-sponsored media. We ran a newsletter last year, and we did have some, student work every month in the newsletter that would fall under this category. We're not running that newsletter this year because we just didn't have enough material to maintain it, even on a monthly basis. So we don't have any opportunity at the moment for students to publish their work in school-sponsored media.
But we may down the road.
Yeah.
And I suppose that would include maybe an online version or
Yeah.
something that you could see doing in the future. Oh, this seems to be a pretty straightforward policy also.
Yeah, I don't see anything in here that would be objectionable, and most of it would not apply to us, but
It was the word journalist that I saw in here, and I don't remember exactly where, that seemed to be a little more, I was really thinking student newspaper.
at the bottom, it says a student journalist may not be disciplined for acting in accordance with this policy. Is that what you were thinking of?
That and also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, the definition is a student journalist means a student enrolled in the district and SU who gathers, compiles, writes, edits, photographs, or records, or prepares information for dissemination in school-sponsored media. That was very inclusive.
Yeah. Anybody who does anything.
Basically.
Which is fine. I mean, we oversee those kinds of things anyway in elementary school, maybe even quite a lot tighter than high school, because we can and because our kids are younger. So I wouldn't have any problem adopting this. Like I said, it would only marginally apply. At the moment, it wouldn't apply because we have no school-sponsored media that students have the ability to be published in. So.
This would not apply, I believe, to the situation you had last year where students' work got published in the newspaper.
Correct, yeah, because that was not a school-sponsored media, that was a public media outlet. Guys, I have to quickly just check on Mrs. Baker's class. She may be in a call that may not be over at 10 o'clock, at which point I'm gonna have to cover her. So if you give me just a second, I'll be right back to find out where she stands.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. So Kate, we comfortable with C11 also?
Yes, we can move forward with C11.
Excellent.
Again.
So the firearm policy, I'm sorry, the weapons policy, which seemed to have been as Rick and Rich said, I think before a meeting not too long ago, seemed to be an oversight, that all they did was use the firearms policy, the C5 from the VSBA, and did not get to C20, which is more inclusive and does include all weapons.
I'm back, guys, sorry. I'm gonna be okay to stay.
Okay, great.
Are you on C5?
We
C5?
are. So
And then C20, oh wait.
yeah, my first, I think to start, my first question would be, do we want to amend C5 or do we want to just jump into C20, which is more inclusive in many in many aspects beyond just firearms and weapons. Oops, did I just lose you guys? No, okay.
No.
Did you already talk about that?
Minimized you by accident. What was that?
Did you two already talk about that?
Nope, just starting the conversation
Okay.
now. So, Matt, how do you feel as an administrator about C20? Does it cover, let's just focus on the weapons aspect of it. Does it focus weapons and cover weapons enough for you?
Yes, the answer for me is yes. I feel like C20, if we had a C20, we would be fine with the C5 model policy without being edited. C20 covers all the scenarios that I've bumped into with weapons. It also gives the board the option to, or it gives the administration to have administrative procedure to continue with the expulsion hearing as part of the process, which I'm happy to do that. So that was my read on C20, is that I would take C20 and C5 as written from the model policy as compared to trying to author something or pull something forward from the past. I think C20 would be fine.
Overall, that would be my vote. I liked the Dover C5, but really I think it's inclusive of what's in C20.
I think if you go back a little bit, you find that C20 was the VSBA's response to needing a better C5, and the Dover board years ago had already done that by amending their C5. So, it's
They
like
just didn't see it.
evolution.
Yeah, they didn't see the need to.
Yeah. So I feel like if I had a good C5, this C5 and this C20, I could have handled the cases that I've seen in the last 4 years with weapons, much in the very same way that we've done it, and still be well within the guidelines of the policies.
So it wouldn't necessarily change the way you do anything. It would just give structure to it.
I would do this recent incident, for example, I would do exactly the same. Administrative procedure would be exactly the same under these two policies as it was when I referenced the old weapons policy. The only thing that I don't see in C20 that I like about our old weapons policy is the piece about engaging law enforcement. And I don't know if that's appropriate anymore or if something has changed legally for that to no longer be appropriate, but either way, I like it. And I like the opportunity to engage law enforcement from an educational perspective, because it helps kind of raise the stakes a little bit on something that is, a very, it's an important and necessary piece of the program. So
It not being in a policy, though, doesn't stop you from doing that.
that's correct. I can still wield that as an option.
Would you be more comfortable if it was in the policy and feel that you had some backup for that decision?
I mean, I think I could use past practice as enough backup, and I appreciate the idea of trying to keep the policies as close to the model as possible. So, I think the answer is no. I wouldn't feel more comfortable. I think I would feel equally comfortable using historical past practice if I wanted to do that, especially now that we have a couple of cases in the book.
So look 5 years in the future. You're taking over Bill's job and hiring a new principal for Dover. Without having that new principal not having that institutional knowledge, or knowing, I don't know who the police chief will be once Randy retires, but and Wardsboro doesn't have a police department, right? You guys are the state police?
We are state. Yeah. So it's definitely very different.
I'd love, and this is off topic. I think having a community police department is, solidifying is the wrong word, but I think it's good for a community. I think it would be great to have a joint Wardsboro, Dover educational process with the Dover Police Department. I think when you've got something that's right there, people that you can more relate to than just some random state police coming down to talk to you guys. But that's neither here nor there. So Matt, in that scenario.
Yeah. So the good news is, it's partially because we have a great relationship with our superintendent. But if there's an incident like this, the superintendent is always contacted, and the whole procedure is double checked and reviewed by him. We do that as a safety net for our own ability to remember and properly process all the procedures. It's very helpful. Sometimes Tammy and I will work together on a project or on a situation that's isolated at one of our schools. So we have each other to bounce things off. We have the superintendent. So in that case, as long as the superintendent had some institutional knowledge or some historical knowledge, then they could do that. And they would say, well, we had a situation like that 5 years ago, and we thought maybe it was a good idea to add a law enforcement part to the education component. So that would allow it. But if, it's all new, administrative lifespan is about 5 years, 3 to 5 years for principals and superintendents. If you've got all new people, which is a stark reality in the climate today, then if it's not in here, then somebody could conceivably forget about it, or you could lose it in transition, which would be, maybe a reason to throw it in there.
You know what I think we'll do is I'm going to make a note for the next review of this policy to consider that. Just because I think it will be a lot simpler to just use the existing language now. Let's get it in there, since we don't currently have one. Unless you object, Kate, to that.
No, I think going with the language, because my only thought, and I don't know where it would go, but when you do engage with law enforcement, do they then have a responsibility to follow up more? Do you know what I mean? Are you opening up a different can of worms when you engage in a circumstance like that with law enforcement? Is it labeling a kid too early? That would be obviously we want early warning detection systems. It's super important, but also we want to be cautious about making a kid feel like this is the track that they are on, and they are then labeled and are going to act the part of being a bad kid. I don't know. So that would be my concern with the law enforcement element of it. They're treating it as an educational experience versus you did something really naughty and this is, you made, I don't know. So very cautious phrasing of making bad choices versus you are bad. I don't know. That's my little thinking out loud moment.
Matt, when you engage law enforcement, are you notifying them? Are you actually engaging them with the student? Is it a case basis?
It's always a case by case basis, and you're right onto it, Kate. That anytime you engage law enforcement, it's a balance. It's a balance of keeping it positive, and so we always try to keep it positive. I would never have law enforcement come in and participate in discipline with a student. I would only have them come in and participate in education. Although, of course, we understand discipline is about teaching and learning, but I would never have them participate in anything punitive. If something rose to the point where I had to involve them, I would have to involve them, right? If it's something that's a legal issue or a safety issue that's beyond what we have the ability, the capacity to manage here, then we would have to engage them from that perspective. And they're always really good about using discretion, even when they have to come and deal with something from, you know, a safety perspective in their role as a safety officer. But our role is always educational. Our relationship is always educational. So whenever we have them come in here for anything, it's about education. It's about supporting and developing and growing that positive relationship between kids and law enforcement. And in the case, you know, in this, you know, in a case where we do that as part of the administrative procedure to respond to a policy violation, then yeah, we would be really careful to make sure that law enforcement officers know our objectives, which would be to, you know, make sure the student is keenly aware of the dangers and the possible risks, and you know, so we're informing them of those.
Last thought, given the environment that we're in today in regards to law enforcement, not that a lot of people are going to read this policy before it's implemented, but it could theoretically stir some things up if people really wanted to keep the police out of any aspect of the school. So my vote would be to put on the horizon for review in 3 years, however often we're going to be reviewing. And the policy committee then decide whether it's appropriate. Good, Kate?
Yeah, that's fine. And just for the record, I would have no reservations at all, even in the current climate, about including a law enforcement component in this policy. I wouldn't have any reservations at all about that. I think the Dover PD has a really good relationship with the town and the kids. The police are here 3-4 days a week, just, you know, hanging out at drop off or pick up, so they're a presence for the parents. And I don't feel that we have those. We don't have that attitude toward law enforcement here in town. I might be wrong and I might be blind to it, but nope. I don't see it. I wouldn't hesitate at all.
I think you're right on the ball. I don't think there's any animosity or issue with it in our area.
Yeah.
It's just always it's now something that's always on the top of our, or at least my mind. So Kate, move forward with C20 as
Yes.
written for the SBA?
Yeah, and so will this be replacing the policy that we utilized the other night in the meeting? Because was that C5 that we utilized? So
that was, I'm sorry, that was Dover C5.
Dover C5. So
yeah,
we'll do now after we adopt this one. Like if we do move, okay, then they would have this. So they'll have C5 and C20 to utilize. Okay.
So River Valleys will be fully covered, where I don't know what I'm not going to say that. We'll be fully covered.
The reason we had to use the old C5 was because the new C5 was really limited to firearms and didn't really have reference for knives. In that particular case, we needed that reference, so we had to go back to the most recent policy that had that allowed us to deal with that particular incident.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the legal track was for being able to do that. That was where I was going, but in this case, I don't think it's an issue. It was handled well. Okay, so we've got 3 policies to recommend to the board. We're going to hold off on, I'm just doing a review now. We're going to hold off on B6. I'll get some more information from Sandra. We're good with the transportation except for some wording. The C4, we're going to recommend updating to the newest VSBA policy name and content. F31 school choice, we're going to change the number to F50 and leave as is. Other than asking that the procedures be added to the file, the public file. Did I miss anything?
Nope, I think those are all the action items.
Okay. Matt, if I remember correctly, and I know I read this someplace recently and I just can't remember, was it every 2 or 3 years that they recommend policies be reviewed?
Bill had a cycle when I came to Dover, and he would do 2 or 3 policies a month as a kind of a basic goal where they would be reviewed. And so since the numbers changed, I don't know what that worked out to per year, but essentially it was just trying to have an effort so that the policies would be, there was a cycle and there was a procedure for, you know, getting through them and looking at them. And I think he would try to do 2 or 3 a month was his goal back then. So, and I think that worked out to about every 3 to 5 years, each policy would come around again.
Okay. I think that's a good goal. Plus any new policies that may come up or anything specific that comes up. So we'll set a goal, Kate, of 2 to 3 policies a month, going in the order that I listed before, where we're going to start with the student policies and a quick review through all of them to see if there are any other security ones that should be thrown up to the front of the list. Should we try meeting once a month?
Yeah, once a month.
Okay.
Sounds good. So the first week of the month is always tricky because it's budget season in my world. So never near the first, second, or third, even fourth and fifth. I get a little tweaky at that point in the game. Yeah, so sometime in early November.
You think I've got a calendar on?
Early to mid-November.
If you throw out a date, that's going to be fine for me. The only thing I have,
Okay.
I am eventually going to finally go visit my parents, whom I haven't seen since right around the winter holidays last year.
So you want to do Fridays there, 6 and 13 in November.
What I was just thinking was, is Fridays a good day for you in general, Kate?
Yeah, Fridays are my lighter meeting days for everything else. So that's a good one.
Okay. So why don't we, in general, plan on the second Friday of the month?
Second Friday of the month sounds like a great plan because that avoids the first. And then I think overall for the next couple months, I don't think it hits anything too funny. What week is February vacation week is the 15th, right? Yeah. Okay.
And we can always adjust. We can adjust the upcoming meetings, but just to have something to let the board and people know that it will generally be the second Friday.
So February vacation, guys, is actually the 22nd. It's a week later this year.
Okay.
All right. So we'd be good.
Okay.
Do either of you have any specific items to add to the agenda for next time? Any specific policies you want to either review or discuss? There was a bunch of recommended and to consider policies for students. Matt, I don't know if maybe in the next week or two you could just take a quick look through there and see if there's anything that you think we should have. I'm assuming we can avoid the one that's 18-year-old students.
Probably.
And Kate, if you want to do the same thing, if there's anything specific in there that you want to throw onto the agenda, just let me know in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And I will ask Tammy the same thing.
And I think Tammy and Bill and I were thinking that we would kind of tag team these and try to kind of rotate so that one of us would try to be at each one just to be a resource as best we can.
Which would be great. And if you guys can't, then after the meeting, I can meet with Bill and just go over anything that we
Yeah.
discussed.
Sounds good.
All right. Kate, we're all
Guys.
good?
We are good. So we'll look and see what we can come up with for November 9th. Is that where we were at? No, November 13th.
November 13th.
November 13th at 9 a.m. on Zoom.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds
Excellent.
good.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day
Thank
and a
you.
nice weekend.
We'll adjourn at
You too.
10:19. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.